Right, good evening, folks. Welcome to ProductTank London. My name is James. I'm one of the organisers of our meetup, and thank you very much for joining us. For those that haven't been to a ProductTank, either in the real world or in this virtual setting that we now find ourselves in, we are a product community that is across 200 cities all over the world. Here in London, we have events almost every month, and here are the upcoming dates we've got here. We take a little break in August, then are back in September, and we are just trying to arrange our special Santa themed Christmas effort in December. A couple of years ago, we had a very exciting product debate, if you can imagine. So we will try and get something like that working in the virtual world, but keep an eye out for that. If you haven't got involved, then please do go and check out the Mind the Product community. There's a great website full of content that you can have a look at, from interviews all the way through, and blog posts all the way through to kind of explainers of various topics and skills that are essential for all of us in this profession. There's also the prioritized newsletter and the really, really active Slack community where you can ask any kind of questions, post jobs, look for mentors, anything like that. And yeah, loads of ways to get involved. We're also starting to plan what next year's sessions look like. So we'll be sending out a few surveys in the next couple of months, asking people what they would like to see as part of ProductTank in 2021. So if you've got an idea for a topic, or you want to speak, or maybe curate a session, drop us an email, drop us a tweet, and we'll see where we can get to from there. The other way to get involved in Mind the Product is through their brand new membership offering. So this is kind of the premium content on the website that you don't get access to otherwise, and there is some really, really great stuff in there. There's pretty much every couple of weeks an Ask Me Anything session with some absolute superstars of the industry. Plus there's other special events and ways to connect with people, and loads of really high quality content. So go and check it out, mindtheproduct.com/membership, and see what options you've got there. So for tonight, if you've got any questions for our speakers, please do log into YouTube, click on the show the chat button, and then post your question in there. We'll be keeping an eye on all of that, and we'll do questions at the end once all our speakers have been through their topics. Tonight has been fantastically pulled together by Bea. She's going to take you through the topic and introduce you to all of our speakers, and then we're going to get going. So Bea, over to you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. The one skill that I definitely have evolved during the lockdown is to speaking to imaginary crowds through my webcam. So hi, everyone. I hope everyone feels as weird as I do right now. Going quickly to the topic. So when James and I had a conversation about if I would be interested to curate this product tank specifically around building product teams, my first instinct went to all of the org charts and everything and all the processes that we have been setting up in previous jobs that I had. And then I also realized that this is exactly the thing that everyone knows from books and everywhere. And started to think about what else could we tell about this topic. And then I reminded myself of Melissa Perry. Sorry. She gave a really interesting talk in Manchester on the MTP Engage this year. That was my last offline community event. I really miss it. And it was really, really insightful from one perspective. She said that the most important question that everyone needs to understand is who's on your team and who should be on your team when you think about where you want to go and what you need to achieve. So thinking about this, I think tonight will resonate on one topic really, which is when we think about building a product team, it eventually somehow ends up in adding members to the team, adding new people to the people that you already have on your team. And taking this as a guide for tonight, the three talks will be very, very different, but they will still talk about this approach of how can we think differently about adding people to our teams? What can you do when you know that your team is not diverse enough, when you have this need for whatever kind of reason you understand that you need to go against systematic bias or you need to think differently about things. So this is what we're going to hear from Sharon and Annie. And then we're also going to hear from Fonny from a completely different perspective, how you can help people gain confidence in working with a product mindset, and what are the things that you can do, even if you don't have a budget, to help people level up, to help people understand a bit better what you're trying to do. And then the last speaker for tonight will be Simon. And I asked Simon with a very specific thing in mind, which is we often talk about cross-functional product teams, but all the talks that I hear about the topic are coming mostly from product people. So it's really easy to think that there is a best practice, there is a good way, there is a prescribed way of doing things. And we don't necessarily need to talk to engineers to find out what they would need from us. So that was the intention behind me asking Simon to come and talk to a group of product people. And I hope that you are going to gain a lot of insights from all of these talks, because I think they are all talking about different approaches to growing your team and making sure that you have the right people on your side. So that was it. And I think the next task for us is to let Sharon and Annie take the stage. Thank you. Enjoy.
Hello, I guess you can all hear me. Tell me if anything is wrong. Good evening, everyone. Before I introduce myself, I want to thank the ProductTank team for inviting us here tonight, especially Bea and James. And I want also to thank all of you for braving another hour in front of a screen in this so nice light summer evening, at least in London. Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity. So Sharon and I are here tonight to talk about building great product teams. You can see Sharon here, I guess, on top of me, or below, I don't know where you sit. Hi, Sharon. We are product managers working in a fintech, and we are here to achieve a mission. The mission is, you may have heard about it before, money without borders, instant, convenient, transparent, and eventually free. And to achieve that, we are building a number of products. But we are not here today to talk about our product or how we are building it. Rather, we are here today to talk about the teams building the product and how to build great teams. But how do you measure the greatness of a team? By the quality of the product it delivers, maybe. And it seems like we are building a great product at TransferWise. There is plenty of evidence that we have a great product, like high NPS, Trustpilot reviews, share of word of mouth in our growth, and now our latest evaluation, brand new from today. But does it mean we have a great product team? Maybe. We are quite confident that we have created an environment in which talented people can do their best work, that we are confident of. Autonomy, which is a blessing and a challenge at the same time, as you can see by the comments here, is at the core of that. And a very clear mission is the enabler for this autonomy and a key piece that holds it all together. But our teams are not that diverse. Is that a problem, is the question. As with all things in TransferWise, we try to tie it back to the mission. If something doesn't make sense from a mission perspective, it may be an important thing to do, but it may not be the right thing to spend our customers' money on right now. So although improving diversity in product management is something I'm personally really passionate about, is it the right time to fix that at TransferWise? That's the question. And it turns out, yes. If female PMs, for example, are not attracted to TransferWise, we are not hiring from the full market, and we hire a lot of people. And this means we are fishing in an increasingly small pond for talent. Same goes to all the other minorities, and making it harder overall to scale our product teams. It can take up, believe me, it can take up to 12 months to fill a senior PM role at TransferWise. And we estimate we can decrease the average time to fill a role at TransferWise by around 33% if we can double the number of female PMs entering the funnel. And on top of it, having a product team that represents our diverse customer base means we should be able to empathize with our customers even better. And having a product team that encourages diversity of thought and opinion usually means we will be able to build more creative solutions for the problems we face. There is plenty of research out there that suggests this is true. And you can dig it up, or I can send some articles for you later. So how are we doing in terms of gender diversity specifically? And I know what you're thinking right now. Why would we limit the conversation to gender diversity? We should go beyond. Agree, you're totally right. We should, and we hope to go beyond. But I think it will make sense for you in a couple of slides why we started here. So back to the question, we are doing pretty bad. 20% of our product management team in London identifies as women today, and this is way below where it should be. Of course, I'm not the only one who notices or care. More and more comments started like bubbling up in our like internal networks and Slack, and then this happened. And this is sort of where this whole thing that we're going to share with you here today of fixing the imbalance of gender in our product team got momentum. Basically, as organically as this, well, this is TransferWise after all, but my point here is that maybe you don't need to wait for someone high up to act on this, to take the first steps. So next, after that Slack post, a few weeks later, I was publishing the first internal blog post on the initiative. And from there, more people joined the task force and we started working on it. But a question is, why am I telling you this story? It's because I believe you can do the same in your organizations. We'll get to that later. Let's first look into how you're approaching this at TransferWise. So we approach it like a typical PM. We looked at the data. We started formulating hypotheses and trying to validate them. Then back to why gender diversity and not diversity in general, which is connected to this, because we wanted to learn how to move these diversity metrics, how to figure out which problems to solve, how to test some of the actions we envisioned to understand which ones really make an impact. We believe it will be much easier to replicate it in other places when we know what works. So after all, this wouldn't resemble a product approach. This wouldn't be a product management approach to diversity if we were like trying to solve all the problems at once. So the first question to answer is like, where is the lack of diversity coming from? My very first initial hypothesis was that maybe attrition of women was higher than that of men in TransferWise. I checked the data and quickly disregarded that. Numbers told me it wasn't the case. So next I moved on to understanding what was going on with hiring. So the first hypothesis I explored here was whether we were biased in our hiring, favoring men over women, because that seems to happen in many places in many different companies. So I went straight to that. I checked whether male candidates were more likely to get through the funnel, and the data show that it wasn't the case for TransferWise at least. So women and men are as likely to move between stages after they've entered the funnel. So bias in our hiring process was not the problem to solve immediately. So I wondered, are there just not enough female PMs out there? Particularly that wasn't my personal experience, but I couldn't tell for sure, so I had to get to the numbers. Talking to recruitment industry players, we figured out that around 40% of the PMs in London identify as women. So like the 20% was way below that. I started talking to other product leads to learn more about the problem from their perspective and their experiences. And from a few of them, I heard that their main issue was the top of the funnel. So next hypothesis was that less women were entering the funnel in the first place when it comes to TransferWise. And that was exactly what was happening. So less than 1 in every 4 applications, referrals, or sourcing were from like female candidates. So again, as good PMs, we decided to fix the top of the funnel first before we went about digging deeper in other areas.
So, hello, I'm Sharon, and I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we did after we figured out where we thought our problem was. So we know the top of our hiring funnel is a problem area. We took a closer look at where our PM candidates were coming from, and those numbers really clarified things for us. What we found was that just 23% of staff referrals into our hiring funnel are women. And referrals is one of our highest converting channels. So these people, we tend to hire them a lot because they're recommendations of existing employees, and they tend to often turn out to be our strongest hires as well. So it turns out that our great product managers know other great product managers. Next up is sourcing. And what we found here was that contributes, again, just 24% of women come through that channel. We own both of those channels and we have complete control over them. So it's a bit embarrassing that those numbers are just not very good. Our direct applications also at a similar level of 23%. Again, not very good. We have less control over that one, but that's not an excuse. So the problem is really clear, which made it really easy to start generating ideas to test. But before we start test and building, like good product managers, we set ourselves some OKRs. So our key results, here's a few of them. We thought that we would try and get our referrals up to 40%. Apologize on this slide, there's a couple of wrong numbers there, but focus on the up to bit. So we were going to get our referrals up to 40% by the end of June this year. We were going to get our sourcing up to 50% by the end of June. And we were going to get our overall female PM candidate pool for roles up to about 35% by the end of June. And the longer term objective that we set ourselves was to try and get to 50-50 hiring by the end of 2020. So pretty ambitious. So what do? We came up with a few ideas about how we were going to actually move those numbers. And first of all, targeting the top of the funnel and those bits that we own around sourcing. So we ran a refer a woman drive a few times actually to try and boost up that referrals channels. And we basically just really encouraged the people at TransferWise to think about, do they know any great female PMs or people that could be potentially PMs, and to reach out to them and just share their details so that we could maybe reach out to them and talk to them about roles. We also mandated a 50-50 sourcing policy across both our internal sourcing and external sourcing. So when we go and look for candidates, we make an actual conscious effort to look for more diversity. And for our current open roles, so we're hiring a couple of group PM roles in our London team and also a lead rollout in our New York office at the moment. We've ensured that that sourcing pipeline begins with a 50-50 candidate pool. And most of the candidates are sourced, so we do have quite a lot of control there. So I should add that we're not, well, I'll talk in a minute about what we're not doing. And then also alongside with that, we did a bit of housekeeping. So we realized that there were a few things that we weren't doing so well. So we started off by looking at our job ads and we rewrote them all to ensure that the language was inclusive. And that's just not for women, right? That actually applies to all sorts of other diversity markers. And inclusive language hopefully is going to make us a little bit more appealing to some people that perhaps didn't consider us before. We made sure the salary ranges on our roles were really clear because we know there's a bunch of research out there on the internet that says that women are much more likely to apply when this is the case. So setting those really clear expectations. And we also explicitly encourage people to apply even if they don't tick all the boxes, because again, we know that women will often discount themselves from a role if they think that they're missing even maybe just one of the things that we're asking for. And finally, we try and be really clear about like our flexible working policy and the supportive culture that we do have at TransferWise, because I think maybe in the past we haven't always sold that as something that is worth talking about. And then also we go one step further and just make it really clear that we're actually investing in this, because, you know, I guess like it feels like an obvious thing to do, but, you know, let's not assume. So we've got a statement that just really says that this is our commitment and we're trying here, and we're actually taking it seriously. And that's on all of our job adverts on our career site. And we've also ensured that we are using representative imagery. So when we have case studies and things like that on our site, we try and make sure it actually represents the team that we have and that we aspire to have at TransferWise. So you can see Annie there in the middle of the picture, showing the world what our TransferWise product team looks like. And then also a bit about our presentation to candidates. So when we actually meet them, we wanted to make sure that we were doing the right things there. So we made sure that we have 2 people in every interview now, so that wasn't always the case in the past, and that wherever possible, one of them is female. And we've actually had really good feedback from candidates already, just commenting on the fact that that's unusual or nice. And apparently before we had the reverse comment, so you know, that's really nice to hear. And then we've also made some changes internally that you can't see yet, but hopefully we'll see in the future. We've made our career maps for product managers really transparent, and we've written it all down and we've put it on our TransferWise internal Confluence wiki, along with the salary band, so that everyone is really clear on the expectations of the role at every level. And hopefully that gives product managers at TransferWise the confidence that they're all held to the same standards. And we're working on getting this onto our career site because we want to publish it. We don't have anything to hide there. We believe in transparency, and we'll hopefully get that up there in a couple of weeks. It's just an internet logistics challenge that's prevented us doing that today. And it's also worth mentioning a few things that we didn't do. So first up, we didn't do 50-50 screening. It's illegal. So that's a good reason not to do it. But actually, we're trying to remove bias, not add it. So doing that wouldn't have been a very, didn't feel like a very good thing to do. We're also not focusing on the proportion of product managers who actually get promoted at TransferWise, because we looked at the data and actually they do really well. There's no data to suggest there's any problem there. And in fact, actually at some of the junior levels, the female PMs actually over-index and tend to do better. So that's really nice to see. And then the other thing that was a little bit out of our control, as I'm sure was the same for everyone else, was that we had to slow down on a few things because of coronavirus. So some of our hiring plans perhaps didn't go as quickly as we'd expected them to. And we certainly haven't been running or being at as many events as we perhaps usually would have done. So what about our culture? So we talked a bit about our hiring pipeline and that being a challenge and a really important part of how we build our diverse teams. But we've got a lot of product teams already. As Annie said, we've got, I think, upwards of like 50 or 60 product managers. And our internal culture and behaviours that have maybe got us to where we are today are certainly things that we should be focusing on. And we've done a few things there to try and figure out, like, how can we be better? So when we're hiring for people, we try to be really explicit about what we're looking for. So those things that are in hiring managers' heads that they don't always write down and are perhaps just assumed or make the process less transparent, we've tried to really address that and make sure we write down what we're looking for so that candidates know what to expect and also what to prepare for. And that obviously applies to our internal teams as well. We try and make sure our interviews are balanced. So we've been trying to run training around unconscious bias, and the nature of it being unconscious is I'm sure a lot of people don't even realize that they're doing it. So we're trying to ensure that people are really aware and are not unconsciously doing things that might be making our team not as diverse as it could be. And we've been trying to celebrate the strength of our diverse teams where they exist, because we have got some, and while we've got a bit of work to do, we've got some really great examples that we want to make a bit of a fuss about and just really amplify that. There is more that we need to do though to truly make TransferWise representative of the customers we serve. Like, we accept that. So probably the question we ask ourselves most as product managers at TransferWise, whether it's when we're working on our teams or whether we're working on our products, is what's the impact that we've actually had? And applying our product manager heads to this challenge, we've very much asked ourselves that question. And we're about 3 or 4 months into this now. Like, we really only set those OKRs at the start of our Q2. And I'm not going to use coronavirus as an excuse, but it did slow us down. Maybe that's part of the reason here. But I genuinely think this is not a quick fix. Like, it's not a problem that you can solve overnight. And when we looked at our data after around 3 months, we felt like it was too early to see the impact yet. You can see a little bit of movement in some of those numbers. Referrals and our sourcing have definitely gone up, and we've definitely put the effort in there to do that. So that's really good to see. But they're not quite there. They're not quite yet where we want them to be. And certainly those figures, if we look further down the funnel to actually the people that we hire and bring into the organisation, it hasn't trickled down that far yet. So it needs more time. And the other thing that we're really aware of is that we need to keep learning. So we're not experts here. Like, I think, we're trying to be really humble about this, and we want to listen and we want to correct ourselves. But we accept that we have probably got, a lot of things that we still need to learn. So we've looked through a couple of other channels to try and broaden our awareness of, what are we doing here, and like, what are some of the things that we could be doing. We reached out to our female PMs at TransferWise. But like Annie said, there's not that many of us. So we looked externally as well, and we found a few more to ask them about that 16% figure, the 23% figure that I mentioned earlier, which was around the proportion of female candidates that directly, proactively apply to TransferWise. And we asked them, some questions about this, like what might be preventing you or stopping you from doing that? And the answers weren't that surprising, to be honest. Fintech and product management are perceived to be masculine industries. Personally, wasn't surprised to hear that. And even just entering those industries can feel intimidating if you don't see yourself represented in the teams or the companies that you're joining. I think any female PM out there has probably had that experience where they've been in either a Zoom room or a room full of guys and they're the only one. I've certainly been there, and I think Annie's picture earlier demonstrates that she has too. There's also this thing called a bro culture, which apparently exists, and the idea that sort of speed and growth is positioned as far more important than inclusivity and diversity, and there's definitely a perception that that exists. And also the final one is like intimidating expectations. So to be clear, I think the expectations of product managers are high, and that's a good thing. That's not a negative thing. And the people that, you know, companies hire into those roles need to have a certain skill set, and they're not entry-level roles often. But it's the fact that those long lists of requirements and perhaps no suggestion of any support when you actually join could be the things that are off-putting candidates. So that was a really interesting thing to read about. And then a couple more. We heard that women are attracted to impactful, meaningful work. So rather than emphasizing the perks that we offer at TransferWise, maybe we should talk more about our mission and our team culture. I think we genuinely have a good story to tell here, as do many other companies. And then finally, we heard that connecting with communities, so like ProductTank, which is an amazing community that I've been part of for many years now, and building relationships in those networks and going to those kind of events is really important. People often find their next role through someone that they met. Personally, that was my experience at TransferWise, so like it really resonates with me. And there's more that we can do at TransferWise in all of these areas. We're really aware of that. So what are we doing next? We're going to iterate. We're going to iterate on our approach as we learn, when we get more data, and also from speaking to PMs in the community. And collectively, we've agreed that in about 3 months' time, we're going to do that exercise again and look at the numbers, because at the moment, we just feel like we haven't got enough data to make any more sort of significant changes to what we're doing. It's not a quick fix. We're at the start of our journey to build a more diverse team, as I'm sure are many of you. And Annie mentioned that what we wanted to do here was to see what we could share that might help others do what we're doing, applying your PM skills to building great teams. So here's our tips and suggestions. First up, get your data. Don't assume stuff. I think Annie's experience there was really, really worth sharing. Like, you know, you have these assumptions about why your team is like it is, but don't trust your assumptions, get the data. If you haven't got it, start collecting it, even if it's manual. You got to start somewhere, and that's very much what we did. We didn't have like beautiful automated reports. We just got what data we could and try and understand that problem properly and figure out what are the biggest levers that you've got to correct it. So for us, it was some of our actual own processes around hiring people, so sourcing and our referrals. And then find some allies. So this word is being used a lot at the moment, and I think it's really, really important. Those allies can be at any level. I think, you know, for this kind of use case, it's people in your organization, above, around, below you, and get them on board by talking to them about that problem and sharing that data and telling that story. You know, that's what we do as product managers. It's one of our core skills, and it's a really effective way to engage people. And, you know, maybe if you do this, you can start your own revolution in the way that we have at TransferWise. Thank you very much for listening. And yes, we are hiring, of course. Thanks very much.
Thank you. It was really, really awesome. So you already triggered my confirmation bias. Thanks. You confirmed the way I look at the world. But really, it's really awesome to see how thinking like a product manager means that no matter what kind of problem you have in front of you, you can follow the same process. You gather evidence, you look for assumptions, you look for data, you were constantly learning and evolving the whole process. And I have to say that those are impressive numbers, especially in the current climate with the limited amount of resources that you had, doing it almost as a side job. So it's great. Next up, Funny. And my good news is that she's going to show you exactly the tool that you can use to start doing what Sharon and Annie just did.
Hi, thank you. Can you all see my screen? Just to double check. Okay, I assume yes. James said that like he will shout if anything goes wrong. So I assume yes. So first of all, thank you very, very much for having me. It's such an honor to be here tonight talking to you, especially after such an important topic that you just shared with us. Thank you for the great insights and the tips, Annie and Sharon. And I'm also looking forward to hear your perspective on how to build great teams, Simon. So yeah, but just in between those times, let me just introduce myself. My name is Funny, and I will talk to you about a very simple tool, yet powerful tool that we developed at Funders Factory in the product coaching team, which helped us empower founders with stronger product mindset. This is just one way of enhanced product thinking that work for us. And my aim with this presentation today is to inspire you to find your way of doing that. Just quickly, a little introduction on me and Funders Factory. So as I said, I'm a product coach at the factory. Prior joining to the factory, I was working on diverse range of products from software to hardware. And my most recent role was prior to joining the factory, product director at MRSys, which is a marketing platform. I absolutely love what I do, and I'm really grateful to be surrounded by awesome, talented people that I can always learn something new from, or maybe learn together with. Just before we move on to the tool, let me just introduce you Funders Factory, because it all makes sense how we got to this tool and why it was needed. Just a little bit, stay tuned and bear with me. We'll get there. So at Funders Factory, our vision is to power funders to go further faster. They partner with funders and corporates to build, fund, and scale ambitious startups worldwide. We have an incubator, which is called the Studio. And for early stage startups that already prove some traction, we have an accelerator to join to. Our traction after 4 years, we had about more than 100 startups in through our program. And they successfully raised more than $260 million so far. Our NPS score currently is 79. And yeah, and I had a chance to work with about more than 30 companies over my time at the factory. As I said, we operate worldwide. We have 4 locations live already: New York, Paris, Johannesburg, and London. But we are also looking into new areas into the future. And I talked to you about product coaching. So in the beginning at Funders Factory, we had a slightly different model, but we quickly realized that assigning product managers to each of our concepts just doesn't scale. But we all kind of agreed that what we need is a really strong product mindset to be able to deliver. And for us, product mindset or product thinking means that it considers the product in the context of its use. Basically, it means it's valuable, feasible, and usable. And I'm sure this is not new to you, basically building the right product the right way. And our solution to support our founders to get that was product coaching. All right, what does that mean? So let me give you an example. So Sophie is about to launch a new product that will minimize waste and maximize efficiency in a supply chain of the beauty industry. She got 10 years of experience in the industry. She already optimized the supply chain of 3 multinational brands. She got an extensive network, great leadership skills, sales and marketing experience. She also have a great board of experts supporting her. And in her team, she got a junior but very strong partnership lead. She got funding. And that's when all these questions rise. How do I start? And what do I do next? And how do I know if I'm doing the right thing? Should I get a product manager? What if I can't afford one yet? And then the list just goes on. So that's when we come in. But I can already see that the question is forming in your head. How is that relevant to me as a PM? How is Sophie relevant to me as a PM? Well, imagine you are put into my shoes trying to support Sophie. Who is Sophie to me? To me, Sophie is a mix of really 2 different roles, but the roles that will probably sound familiar to you as well. From one point of view, Sophie is an important stakeholder of mine, as she's the CEO of the venture that we invested in. And with some Sophies, it is really easy to work with. With some Sophies, it is more challenging, as I'm sure you all experience with your important stakeholders. But on the other side, from another perspective, she's a talented and experienced person with, in some case, maybe limited product experience. This could translate to someone who has been trying to move to product management role from some other role, maybe UX design, business analyst, engineering, customer support, whatever that it may be. We all experience how hard it is to get into this community and become a PM. Everyone is about experience, but unless someone gives you the opportunity to gain that experience, it is really hard. So Sophie might be someone you would love to hire into your team, but you would need to spend significant time to coach and support, especially in the beginning. So how do we do that as product coaches at the factory? We try to work on both the theory and the practice side. we curate reading lists, for example, which helps Sophie cut through the noise and Sophie's team. We also have a coaching framework, which is actually the base of what we do at the factory. There were already talks on the Minded Product community. I'll share links afterwards by my fantastic colleague Seb. But really what it is, it's a self-assessment to identify product-related gaps and focus areas of her so that we can work on it together. And then we also provide monthly product forums, which allows Sophie to learn from experts and share experience with fellow entrepreneurs, as well as we create templates and with instructions, which helps the team to move independently fast, and so we don't become a bottleneck. We also like to organize regular retrospectives, which helps Sophie's team and us to understand how our relationship could work better, how we could support them better. And we also offer meeting facilitations, which helps the team. We basically show what good looks like in our mind. But what I noticed, and I got a little bit frustrated about, is that these questions still got repeated. I found this great tool online, but how do I know if I'm doing it right? Can someone tell me if the output is good or bad? What is the best tool, the practice that managers use? And like, we always talk about these things. We talk about user journey mapping on a daily basis, but for some reason, these questions still get repeated. And I kind of felt like that we don't do well enough on the practice part yet. So yeah, it got me thinking. And my question was, how can I quickly improve them by giving them an opportunity to practice more? Maybe even encourage them to step aside from their own product. Sometimes it is easier to understand if you're not fixated on something that you're trying to solve for a while. And on a personal note, I also always had these mixed feelings about tools and frameworks, because unless you know how to do it right, it can be more harmful than helpful. So to me, frameworks like value proposition canvas don't tell you the answers. It tells you a way to think things through, which is really helpful. But even in that case, you might end up using it wrong and kind of have this like false positive feeling at the end. So I had an idea, a very simple one, to actually mitigate that problem. What if we create a session where we can just go and practice? I named this idea 5-slide product and practice to make better product decisions confidently, which is a quick and easy way to understand product management tools and frameworks. My hypothesis was that if we work on a real example and they receive feedback from each other as well as from us, they will be more confident using these tools, and the questions will be answered. I set aside some indicators to measure whether it works or not, and I wanted to know like what was the NPS score after, as well as how many times they reused the tools that we discussed on the sessions. And I also reached out to some of them to collect qualitative feedback via interviews. And finally, we got to the tool. I know it's been a little bit long, but yeah, so this is, it is, as I said, it's pretty simple. This is how it looks like for now. We iterated on it a little bit, but this is how it works at the moment. So it is a 1 hour long session for 5 to 10 people. No previous knowledge or no previous attendance required session. First half of the session is explaining one framework or tool that product managers often use, using only 5 slides. And then the next part is about practice, where they get a real but hypothetical example and that they can work on. And then everyone needs to present what they did. And so we can provide each other feedback. And I really encourage giving constructive feedback to each other so that we can maximize our learning. In more details, this is how it looks like. We got, on the first slide, we got a topic intro. On the next slide, we just explain when the tool comes handy. On the third slide, we share tips and tricks and maybe common mistakes to avoid. And the fourth slide is really important. That's when we talk about examples, and bad examples are also really important to show. And sometimes we actually start a little bit of discussion with the participants already at this slide. And then the last slide is about the exercise, explaining what we are going to do together. And then we go into practice, which takes up the majority of the time. As I said, it's a hypothetical but real example, and they work individually or in small teams. We like to use Zoom to help us out here, and we definitely love the breakout rooms as well as Miro boards. Those are all really great softwares. And then at the end, we all give each other feedback on the work that we did. So this is just to make it super clear what we talk about. If we are talking about a user interview, then the first slide would be about the definition, what a user interview is, and then we would move on how it works, when to use it. As I said, some tips and mistakes to avoid, good and bad example, like leading questions, and then we would go into the exercise. I prepared a template. If anyone's interested, I will share the link afterwards. And so back to the results. As I said in the beginning, this is something that we wanted to measure. So far, our NPS score is pretty high. Also, 87% of the participants used the tools since we learned about it. And fun fact that one of my colleagues who joined one of the sessions, she was so inspired by the tool that we used that she actually launched a podcast that she wanted to do for a long time as a side hustle. And so far we run sessions on 5 topics, and we have recorded for a lot more. Now the challenge is to figure out how many sessions and how frequently we need to run each topic to fulfill the need of 30 people, which is always changing in the program. So that means that we would need to come back to topics that we already covered. But that's something that we need to do next. We also, as a secondary benefit, realize that it can be a good alignment tool. A colleague of mine who joined the session to learn more about product has changed the way she argued on a company meeting and influenced by the session. And she got back to me to tell me that it happened. And also another stakeholder of mine who reached out for, she reached out for extra product help and validation before pushing her ideas through because she felt she was biased. And it just felt like, yeah, like if it really okay what a product manager does, we might be able to make ourselves understood better. And so let me just share with you some potential use cases when a tool like this can be helpful. So maybe in a small team, but occasionally the whole team gets involved in product decisions, it is a good tool to use to align about what a good roadmap looks like before going in and working on it. Or maybe again in a small team where there are a few seniors and a lot of junior PMs, this could be a quick and easy way to support them. Also, in teams where there is only one PM, and I know there's a lot of companies out there where this is the case. You need your team's help, right? So this can be a way to quickly empower your whole team with a stronger product mindset, so that they're able to make decisions and you don't become a bottleneck. I can also see this could be helpful in bigger teams as well. So, for example, if there is a sales team which has a huge impact on product, then having sessions like this can help the discussion and the communication between the teams. In also big teams where the organization wants to become more product-led, this could be a fun way of teaching product thinking to anyone in your team. And as well as a similar situation with difficult stakeholders, occasional events like this, maybe on a team building, could help them see and try themselves out, like what it feels like to be a product manager, and that might help the communication going forward. So as I said, there are simple ways to enhance product thinking. And if there's one takeaway from this session, that would be that it worth investing time into finding your way to empower your team with a stronger product mindset. Thank you very much for the opportunity again. Back to you, Belle.
Thank you. I love the gifts. so much. But actually, it was really great to hear that, because it just confirmed what Sharon and Annie were talking about, and now people have an idea how they can start the journey. Going back to Simon Cormer, the last talk of the evening, I hope everyone is still awake. We can see the slides as well. Hi, Simon. Over to
Hello,
you.
everybody. Thanks for having me. Yeah, here to talk about building product development teams from a developer's point of view. So, bear with me. I'm a bit nervous talking to so many cool product people. So I broke it down into 3 sections. So I'm going to talk about myself, which I love doing. I'm going to talk about common problems that I've identified during my career, and some solutions that I think could help both you and your dev teams, your product development teams. So, hi, I'm Simon. I'm a head of development for a dev team in the charity sector. Before COVID, I worked in Shoreditch, which obviously means I'm a vegan. I love fancy coffee, I love fancy beer, and I ride a motorcycle. So that's obviously everything you need to know about me. But I'm actually really passionate about continuous delivery, continuous improvement, and like the product mindset. But all the opinions that I'm giving you here are all my own, the things I figured out. And if you want to contact me, my details are over there. And don't worry, I'm not going to be talking about tech and stuff. We're going to be talking about building teams. We're going to talk about stuff that Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about SQL or HTML or anything like that. But if you ever do want to talk about that stuff, do ping me. I love talking about it. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the topic of things that may demotivate development or engineering teams. And right at the end, we're going to talk about, obviously, things I think can help fix that. So, Marty Kagan is one of my heroes. I read his book back in 2018, and that was around the time I joined a startup, and I just left this big company that had a very rigid product development structure, and it made me realize of all the things that I was doing wrong, and that probably a lot of the industry may be doing wrong as well. And so I wanted to talk about the concept of Scrumafall, and it's kind of where I think a lot of teams end up, where they start on their agile journey, and they want to get to a better place than they are at the moment. And everything's very innocent, and everyone wants to get better. But unfortunately, they kind of end up in this situation where they're kind of doing agile, but not really. And Marty Kagan talks about this in his book called Inspired. So what happens is somebody somewhere in a company comes up with an idea. That's probably given to a PO or product owner or BA, a business analyst, to write a load of stories. So they end up with a bunch of stories, and they sit down with a dev team, and they just go, kind of like, let's sit down for a few hours and talk about estimation. And we're probably talking about story points. This all could be hours, could be days. And then the development team come in and they iterate on that thing, and then it's probably shipped, or potentially it's gone to like a QA, a gated release, and things like that. But the reality is, the only agile bit is there, where the development team come in. And unfortunately, you can kind of see this a waterfall sort of pattern. And unfortunately, it's not the best software development lifecycle. Sure, it's much better than probably what they were doing before, but really, in my opinion, it's like a stepping stone to a better place. And Scrumafall has a lot of drawbacks, and one of the key ones is slow feedback cycles. So the idea, to prove if an idea is worth doing or not, you have to go through all these steps instead of maybe doing other things such as prototypes or other sort of quick ways of getting to market. So what impact does Scrumafall have on a development team? Well, unfortunately, it does disempower the development team, because they're only treated as a delivery funnel. They're not part of the product process. Every team I've ever worked in want to be part of a wider process. Unfortunately, I've been in teams where, here's a story, please deliver that thing. And and the development team are kind of treated as a resource, and that word's going to come up later, and we will talk about that too. And in reality, what you end up with is 2 teams. You have the product team and you have the development team, and they're separate entities, and you end up with this concept of handover, where maybe there's a spec, or maybe there's some other thing that needs to be handed from one team to the other. And if you imagine having 2 glasses with some water in one, and you keep pouring it back and forth, you're going to lose water over time. And that is the context and the knowledge is going to be lost. Whereas if we all started the process together, we'd all learn together, and we'd get to the end together. And also the term accountable will probably come up because of the estimations that we talked about, the backlog. What happens is developers at this point probably don't really know much about the problem or how maybe the technology they need to work on or modify to get to the end goal. And so the estimations are held accountable to them. And what happens is trust is broken down over time, and then people start adding buffers in. So developers may like double their estimates because, you know what, this is really difficult to guess. And then you end up in the whole pointing game where people go like, is that really 5 points? And some of you may have been in those sort of conversations. And at the end of the day, you can point anything as you want. If it takes time, it takes time. And unfortunately, people are penalized for this. And really, what does this what impact does this have on the product development team? Well, you end up in a situation of them and us being the product team and development team. You're not working as a single team, you're working as 2 teams. And you can also then start adding in QA if that's something you do as a separate team, and you end up with lots of isolated pods or teams. So let's move on to more stuff. And you guys probably know this way more than I do, which is product managers are not project managers. And so I want to quickly talk about some stuff that I've learned over time, especially like starting Agile and moving on to other things. And Kevin Henney is one of my tech heroes. Love this guy. And he does some great talks. He has a background in physics, and he does writes a lot of books. So he's really, really interested in the spoken word, or the written word, obviously. And but one thing he said in one of his talks is like, people often talk about velocity, but if only they knew what it meant. Velocity means speed and direction, when often they mean speed. And this is really important because you could be going 100 miles an hour in that direction over there, but it doesn't matter how fast you go, and if you're going in the wrong direction because you're meant to be going that direction. So let's talk about story points. A good topic to talk about on a Wednesday evening. So this is a classic burn down chart, or you may have heard of burn up charts as well. And what happens is, if you think of the y-axis as stuff or story points and the x-axis as time, the idea is that you want to plot how well your team is doing, churning through all the stuff that you've probably already estimated and put in your backlog. And you're plotting that over time. What you're actually plotting is those story points is, at the end of the day, an abstraction of time. People may say it's not, and you may do like large t-shirt sizes and small t-shirt sizes, but as soon as you start averaging out how many story points you're doing in a time period, what happens is people go, well, you did 13 points last sprint. That means you should do it again this time. And what you end up doing is plotting time against time. And this is actually a measurement of utilization. So how busy has your team been in the last week, and has there been any sickness? It doesn't really tell you, are you actually going in the right direction, and are you actually going to hit the goals that you want to set? And so this is a really important thing to understand when it comes to empowering product development teams, because if people are held accountable to estimations they made months and weeks ago, and that's the only thing you're measuring, then you're potentially measuring the wrong thing. So I kind of want to talk about, in a well-integrated product development team, sort of traits you'll probably come across. So, and again, don't worry if you don't do any of these things, or you do some of these things. These are just, again, my opinions. But like in a well-integrated product development team, like POs or product owners, they're not assigning work to the team. Their job is to make sure that the highest priority thing is going to be worked on next. It's up to the self-organized, you probably hear quite often, cross-functional, and you probably hear often as well, team. It's up to them to figure out how to build and deliver the thing. And PO is like part of the process, but they're not there to assign work. And POs understand the needs of the customer. So, you guys, you talk to the customers, you talk to so many teams, you're bridging the gap between so many people. You know the needs of the customer more than the development team, for example. And when you work as a product development team, you're that source of knowledge. So keep up the good work there. And POs are not setting a schedule. So, often you may come across like a legislation deadline, or maybe something a sales team would like to get live. But if you set a deadline and you don't manage that scope, then you're potentially doing it wrong. Really, in my opinion, product owners are really good at controlling scope. So sure, we may need to hit, January the 1st because a payment provider deadline's coming in, but you can probably modify that scope to make sure that the most important things get out early to reduce the risk, and then other things come later on. POs are amazing. So my favorite thing having a product owner is someone to go to ask questions. And if they don't know, working with the team to solve them. So we're quite often adding metrics into our tools to figure out, are people actually clicking this button and things like that. And POs are not managing the development team or the people working that team. You know, they're not telling people what to do. But they do collaborate, just as I said earlier, with other teams, with UX, with customer success. They're doing customer interviews, all these sort of things, to bring all that knowledge into a well-integrated product development team. And I wanted to talk about also how are you measuring and celebrating success, and how are you communicating that to the rest of the organization. Are you finding yourself communicating story points or hours spent or number of releases? And to be clear, I do sometimes throw out a bit of a number every so often saying how many releases we've done. If we've, you know, finally got to 15 releases in a day, I'm very proud of that. But that's not, you know, it's not really something, that's not something to communicate success. That's an output of that's an output of, you know, the goal that you're trying to hit. And developers, you know, at least the ones that I work with, we don't measure ourselves in how many lines of code we write. We measure ourselves on the impact we've had on our either industry, our customers, or the people using those websites. So if you find yourself saying, we delivered N story points this project, I'd consider not doing that and figuring out some other really interesting goals and things you can communicate. For example, I'll give you some examples of stuff we've done in the last year, for example. So we helped increase donations to charities by 5%. You know, that's amazing. That's a goal. We've hit something. I'm really proud of that. Or very recently, we reduced the time it takes to submit a gift aid claim for a charity from hours to minutes. And that will have huge positive impact, you know, on the industry. And so keep these things in mind, especially when you're communicating as a product development team, your success and your achievements. I wanted to quickly talk about toxic language, and it's something that's probably not talked about enough in our industry. And it's something that, you know, if you do well, if you communicate well, it will help improve trust in your team. And it will not only improve the clarity of the messaging, but also instill trust in your team, and ideally not break down trust any further. So be precise. Resource is one that really it's like a knife in my heart every time I hear it. Like developers, we are not a resource. And so, you know, product owners, you are not a resource. So stop using that to describe people. And if you ever find yourself saying, we need more resource to deliver a thing, really think about what it is you need, because adding more people to a project has been proven not to improve, the reduce the time spent to deliver. In a lot and I'll have to find the information, but in a lot of cases, it would actually increase that time for delivery. So think about what it is you need to describe. You know, if you need more developers, say developers. If you need more UX people, say UX people. And identifying like a group of people as them when you're meant to be working as a unified product development team is not a good place to be. It will lower your the trust between the different team members. So keep that in mind. It's very kind of similar to the resource one. And accountability is a word that is usually associated with punishment. So I like to think that I'm responsible for my development team. I'm not accountable for them, or I'm responsible for making sure we hit deadlines. But if someone's going to say I'm accountable and I'm going to get fired because of it, then wow, that's not a very nice environment to be in. So my whole talk is really about building trust. So choosing those words correctly can really help build trust in your teams. All right, whew, take a breath. We've talked a lot about stuff, maybe tough stuff to listen to. But now let's talk about some solutions. So this is where it all gets pretty fun. So some of you hopefully heard of Simon Sinek. He's great at talking about teams, and he's got some great talks on like TED Talks and all sorts. So go on YouTube. But the way he describes a team really speaks to me, which is a team is not a group of people that work together. A team is a group of people that trust each other. And so for me, when I built my development team and I was involved in building the product development team, I always start with trust. So first thing first, what are your team's core values and beliefs? If I use my team, for example, because we are in the charity and not-for-profit sector, I can easily say everyone in my product development team has some sort of earning to want to have a positive impact on the charity sector. And really, if you understand your team's core beliefs and values, you can use that to build a common trust like platform in your team. So and you know, one of the benefits of having high amounts of trust is that it improves the willingness to experiment and reducing the whole fear factor of failure. And trust isn't free. It takes a lot of work, but the rewards are great. So let's talk about some things you can do to help build trust in your product development team, starting with, and again, pre-COVID, this may be a bit easier, but when was the last time you went for a coffee or just went for a walk or had a one-to-one with someone in your product development team, ideally not someone with the same job role as you? You know, building those relationships will really help you build a closer team. And are you attending your team's rituals? And these could be like stand-ups, they could be retros, but are you also participating in them as a team member? If you're standing there watching and asking when something's going to be delivered, that is different to attending and telling, you know, explain to the team what maybe your objectives of the day are and how and what help you need to get it done. And again, pre-COVID, but maybe with Teams or Slack that you could do it virtually. But are you sitting together? Are you part of the team? Or does the product team sit way over there and the development team sit way over there? If so, consider, you know, doing the whole cross-functional sitting together thing so you're available to the team and they're available to you. And is your product development team given space to experiment, or do they have a very strict deadline? Giving people time to experiment, and this includes product, it includes UX development, it builds trust because you're giving them trust to go off and try some stuff and come back with some output. It's really, really a good way of building trust in your team. And I'm going to quickly blitz through some stuff that I think. So this is like, you know, we work with each other, not for each other. So think about conversations over specs. And by this, I mean, instead of coming up with a massive detailed spec document, come up with like maybe premises or goals and go and talk to people, you know, get them involved, because very early on, they may be able to help direct you in the right direction or stop you from, you know, spending a lot of time on something that's maybe not even possible. And really focus on goals rather than estimations. You'll get a lot more, you know, you start building the why in your team. And if you have a why message in your project of the goal is that, let's hit that goal rather than, you know, that date, then people are more empowered to do better work and enjoy it more. And I've talked about discovery a bit already, but like, you know, really embrace discovering your team. It's something, you know, that I've learned in the recent years, and, you know, it's, you know, really helped my team. And ask for help from your product development team, and they should feel comfortable asking you for help as well. If you feel like there is a barrier there where you can't ask for help, maybe question it, bring it up at your retros, to go for those one-to-ones and start building those relationships. And invite developers to customer calls. We love talking to our customers if we hear good things or bad things, because that builds that connection with our customers and it helps us understand, again, the goals. I've said goals 1,000 times, so I do apologize. And celebrate with the team. Have you recently just smashed a goal? Fantastic, go to the pub. Or have you just proved something isn't worth doing? Fantastic, go to the pub with the team, not on your own, because, I mean, you could if you want. Or anything else, obviously. And one thing I talked about quite early on in the presentation was this Scrumathore approach. So I wanted to quickly go through one of the many alternatives to that software lifecycle, software development lifecycle, and that is the OODA loop. And this originates from fighter pilots who need to be truly agile, because while they're in the air, things are changing at 1 million miles a second. So first thing first, and I'm going to use an example of something we've done recently. First thing is collect and review data. So for us, we talked to our customers and we found out they wanted a richer content and editing experience in our product. Great, that's really good. We talked to a lot of customers. They all started saying similar things. And what they wanted was easy content they could put on a page and make look professional without paying designers to come in and do it. They can put content in, but to make it look really professional is really difficult and expensive. So our first decision we made was we could quickly write a type of markup language, and that'd be really quick for us to deploy, get into customers' hands and get feedback. So we did that in a timely way. We then got feedback from the customers and we found out, actually, this is a bit too complex for them. And many of them got confused. And luckily, we went through a quick iteration to get to that point. And then when we started interviewing them more, we found out really they want a more integrated GUI experience. And that's great. So we then went round the OODA loop again, and we expect to go through it many more times. And that's because we can't expect to know everything up front. We need to do quick iterations, get information, and we can then achieve our goals. Cool. Hopefully I haven't gone too over my time, but quick summary. We went through Scrumafor and like some of the pitfalls and things and the negative impacts it has on product development teams from an engagement point of view. We talked about story points. We talked about the sort of things that PO should be spending their valuable time on and things they maybe shouldn't. We talked about communication of our goals and our successes. We talked a bit about toxic language, and I talked a lot about building trust in a team, and a bit of an OODA loop, and I love saying OODA loop, so I'm going to keep saying it. Anyway, so ideally, if you're able to take anything away from today, is like building trust in your team. It's really important. A team isn't a team without it. And if you get, a lot of trust in your team, in your product development team, that is, hopefully you end up in a situation like this and not like this. And this is I am a part of this product development team, and there's 2 product people in there. If you can fish them out, good luck. So thank you, everybody. Oh, my animations are a bit broken, but there, thank you, everybody. My contact details there if anyone wants to chat, and I think I'm about done.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you very much. I really, really love the style of the presentation, and I really loved how you could use very strong opinions, but without actually hurting anyone's feelings. So hello, everyone's back. We're starting the Q&A. Just so you know, Simon didn't go over too much. We already have a couple of really, really good questions. Also, we have a hi from Martin Eriksson to Sharon. Welcome back to London. Let's start the Q&A. Just a reminder to everyone who's watching the stream, you can still ask questions on the YouTube comment section, and we will see them here. So anything you have in mind, just keep it going. I also have a question for the speakers, just as a last question, so you have some time to think about it, but I would love to know what you've learned today, or if there was anything that inspired today, or anything that you've heard from a different speaker that you will take on board and start probably leveraging it next week. You don't have to answer right now because we have better questions than this one, but let's keep it for the end. So question 1. I think it goes to Sharon and Annie first, but I think the others should answer as well if they have a good answer for this one. From Rajesh, I'm struggling with proving that diversity will have a measurable impact. How would you go about proving to senior management that diversity does affect the bottom line in a measurable way? Who wants to go first?
I'll start. So I guess the metric that we talked about actually in our presentation is probably the most useful one that I've found personally, and that's around like how long it takes to hire people. And everyone wants to hire fast, right? Like if you find that it takes you 12 months to fill a role, then that has a real impact. And most like senior managers should be able to see that. Like it's I've definitely worked in plenty of places where we've struggled to hire, and I've felt the frustration. And usually the frustration is, oh, we can't build that thing yet because there isn't enough people to do it. So that's my personal favorite one.
Thank you. Anyone else has any thoughts on this? Okay, I would like to add just one thing, that there are various Harvard, I can't speak anymore, Harvard Business Review articles that talk about diversity research with Google and different other big companies, where they were simply just looking at the performance of different teams with different setups, basically, and those are worth checking on the internet. Okay, the next question we have, still about the same topic. Did you consider advertising in different places? And if so, did you get a different mix, or do you think that you could get a different mix? And where would you go for this?
Maybe I can try and take that one, although I don't know much about advertising. I don't think we do a lot of that, to be honest. I know that the most effective sources for hiring for TransferWise are referrals and sourcing. So that's another reason for us to focus on those 2. Although, as Sharon mentioned, we are doing our housekeeping and making sure that all the content that we have in our career sites and everywhere else, like, really it's inviting for everyone to apply. But I think that's why we spent more time on those two, because those are the biggest levers for us right now, because that's where we hire most of the people.
Yeah, I would add to that, actually, like, rather than advertising, which always implies that you're paying for it, I think one thing that I found is quite useful is actually finding like Slack groups, or whether it's like something like ProductTank or like some particular like diversity group. They can be really effective at targeting a particular either type of person or industry. And I've definitely done that before with varying degrees of success, and you definitely get the type of person that is part of that community, right? Like that's the main observation. Whether they're the right person for the job is perhaps a little bit more variable. So like, yeah, I think maybe that's a similar to, I mean, you're advertising, but you're not paying for it there. You're going to a channel and posting something and looking for a very specific group. And I think that can be really effective.
Thank you. Simon, from your perspective, because I think your world in engineering is probably even more doomed when we think about diversity. Do you have any tactics that you could share with people for this?
Yeah, I mean, so what is it right now? My team, so I've got 11 people, 11 developers, including myself, and I think 6 of them are women. So like we're in a really unique position where we've somehow done a really good job. And I was just thinking during all this, like going back to how we started that journey. And I think one thing that was talked about in, I think, Sharon and Anne, your talk was, the industry having meaningful work is really important. And I think being in the charity sector probably helped us a bit. But then it also made me think about like previous companies I've been in. It's like, God, there was one woman in that entire department, and that was like 100 people. Oh my God, it really is. It's a funny industry to be in. For us, I think, I'm trying to think of the success we had. We went to many different sources. We went to like women in tech meetups, referrals as well worked really well. And as part of like our interview, we do make sure we're very inclusive as well. Like we also do like make sure we always include gender neutral, bring people along, just not just men. And and I think just building a team of people you want to be around, and generally I don't want to be just around men, and so like I want a diverse team, and as soon as you start building that, I think it's somehow for us it's the more I think about it, I don't know. But we got referrals through women once we got some women in, and also like I think the way we were willing to train people up in stuff that maybe they weren't already they didn't know, so we're willing to take maybe juniors and things to help broaden their knowledge and all sorts. So having an open mind and like opening up the funnel, like you said, like referrals really help for us as well.
Amazing, thank you. Funny, do you have anything at Founders Factory that looks at these things?
Yes, we do have a task force that's currently working on diversity. We manage, like, I think it's also kind of nature of our business that we're lucky to have more applicants who are female. And we managed to actually get to a 50-50% in the last quarter, which we celebrated. It was huge. Now the next thing that we are working on is background and ethnicity, and this is really hard to crack. And we have a 12-point commitment where we want to be at the end of the year, and basically the whole company is involved and taking responsibility to do that. But so far we haven't yet moved the needle, but we are on it for now. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. Thanks everyone for sharing. I also know that these are quite personal things to talk about, and not everyone is always comfortable to talk very openly about everything, but thanks for that. What I wanted to do just quickly before we go to the close, because there is no new questions as I can see. If anyone has anything in mind that you want to ask right now, just send it. Otherwise, we're gonna close soon. So what I wanted to do is just quickly review what we heard today. So we started with a really good business case around how to think about diversity and how you can then work out the science of fixing things. And then Fanny helped with this tool, and she shared these tips and tricks that you can apply in many different contexts, let it be stakeholder management, hiring or upskilling someone, or just simply creating some allyships within your organization. And then Simon also talked to us about specifically what is it that you need to start with when you think about building a team, and how do you move on from there. Simon, you're lucky because we have a late question for you, but I think it's quite interesting. How does remote working impact trust? And I would go even further. How do you build trust when you work remote?
Okay, so we are humans, we are people. We like seeing and talking to each other generally, maybe not all the time, but at least in my team, we definitely do. And I think we actually had a new team member start on the last day before lockdown. Poor Mia, she had to come into work, dodge the tube, keep everyone away with all the coronavirus, to pick up a laptop to then go back home. Pretty much, it was the weirdest day of her life, probably, she could probably say. And the hard part is like it's keeping face-to-face contact and finding ways, of fun ways of keeping the team together. So building trust. For us, we've played lots of games in the evenings and stuff, or had opportunities to go off and learn. But we also do a lot of pair programming or mobbing in the team, and that is like, you boot up a Zoom session, you share screens, and there's 2 or 3 people on one problem, solving one problem, and that includes inviting product people where possible, and UX. So that is one way to make sure trust is still there and you're not losing it. And then to build it up, I'd probably say, like, those one-to-one sessions. Probably my peer in product, well, he's on holiday at the moment, but we have nearly daily chats on Microsoft Teams and verbally. And that really just builds up a lot of trust because, our career paths at that point hadn't really come into contact that often. And the last few months, they really have. And we've really been able to build that trust, even though, we don't really see each other anymore. And so I think video calls really work. Being overly communicative, so talking a lot, or working, especially remote, you're probably working a bit more asynchronously. And that just means you need to spend a bit more time maybe working on how you're communicating, and if you need to do any sort of status update, make sure it's comprehensive so people understand, oh, they achieved that today, fantastic. And for us as well in the team, we do pull requests, which is another way of communicating what we're working on. So, and that is where someone comes and does a code review and things like that. So in those cases as well, instead of just turning to the person next to you, which is probably what we would have done, you need to be more communicative and write more description as to the intent, the goal, and make sure people understand what's going on. I know that's very techy, and I said I wouldn't talk about tech, but it has to be something to do with communication and also having fun. And finding fun remote things is very difficult, although it is possible. There's a great game we've been playing called Scribble.io, I think it is, where it's Pictionary remotely, and it's an absolute disaster.
We'll share the link after. Thank you, Simon. I just want to be mindful of everyone's time because I know everyone's got a lot of other things, better things probably to do than to listen to us. The question that I promised to ask, could you give me just a thought, a sentence, something that you learned or something that inspired you tonight from the other speakers? Can we start with Fanny, please?
Yes, of course. So I was really inspired by the way how you approached the question to become more diverse. And I think what really the first thing that I'm going to take back is that now that we are working on becoming more diverse from another perspective, language and emphasis on how we communicate outside what we're doing and to attract really good talent is very important. So this is something that that we need to test out and also interview, because we are planning we are on the way of interviewing external people just to see like how we could do better. So that's a really good insight, as well as I know that if we achieve something, we need to go to the pub. So that's the other one I'll take away.
Thank
I'm
you.
looking forward to those times though.
When you can go to the pub
Yes.
after you made a mistake and it's paid by the company. Great. Annie, can you be the next one, please?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that I really enjoyed, and I'm definitely going to take back to work, is the framework that Fanny presented, because we do have a lot of product to build at TransferWise, and we have to rely on more people to build it. It can't just be like product managers thinking about what the product should look like. So we do have a lot of people in our customer support teams, in our operational teams, all over the place, actually helping us define what needs to be solved and how it should be solved. But there is always the problem of like, how do I help them become more product oriented? Although everyone in TransferWise is very like customer focused, they sometimes lack some tools or skills that we try and help them develop. And I think maybe this tool could help us get there faster. Also, I'm gonna have a chat with Fanny and Simon afterwards about the diversity markets, because I want to learn more about what's going on in their teams and what we can learn from that.
Great, thank you. Sharon?
Yeah, so maybe not related to diversity, but I thought like the comment Simon made near the end of his presentation about not calling people resources was a really good reminder. Like, I think we've all done it, I'm sure. It's easy to say that word rather than to actually describe the problem or the thing you need properly. And it's like a nice reminder just to be human, and you're dealing with humans here in teams, and anytime that you forget that, you usually get a bad outcome. So I just thought it was quite nice to hear someone calling that out again, because it happens a lot, and I know it happens probably more to developers than it does to product managers. But I think yeah, like it's a really important point. You're not talking about resources, you're talking about real people.
Yeah, thank you. And also like empathy just comes in. It's really cool. Thank you. Simon, any closing thoughts?
So I mean, at the moment we're doing some recruitment, and I didn't even thought about breaking it down into a funnel and actually thinking about the percentages of people coming in, and and I love the idea of going out to the market to figure out what other percentage of in this case product managers, product owners and things coming through, and what's your drop-off rate. And I was like, man, I didn't even think of approaching this from a technical point of view. I could automate this, not really, but I love the idea of mapping out our current funnel and really thinking out about where people are dropping off, because we're having a bit of a time, taking a while to recruit a specific role, and I'm wondering if this could help us. So yeah, thank you.
Amazing. So I think it's time for us to close. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the speakers, because you all worked really hard. Thank you for being there, for delivering your message. We will share the recording. We will share slides after, as usual, so no one should panic right now about that one. Thank you for joining us, everyone, and hopefully see you after the summer break again. Bye.
Bye.